Well, that's a nice fitting entry.
Yeah.
Before I get into the primary talk that I worked so diligently on last night, I want to share a brief little story about how this stuff works. Some of you have heard me lament in my day-to-day job that there are some properties that I manage which are wonderful, and there are some that are not so wonderful. And in the science of mind philosophy, if there is something that needs to change in our lives, we're taught to focus on what we want it to feel like. And taking that to heart, in my internal work, even though it doesn't always show on the outside, internally I keep thinking, I need that property to feel like that property. And I know that by doing that, Spirit takes up the mantle and causes stuff to happen. And what happened in this case was that, totally unrelated to anything I was doing, within the company I worked, there was another property that had a special need. And that special need could be met by someone who was already busy. But the company thought, we need to move that person to that special need. But to do that, he has to give up 2 small properties that he's dealing with. Now, those 2 small properties just happen to be perfect for moi. So the person whom I answer most directly to calls me up and he goes, you were a little dissatisfied with that property. In fact, he'd even expressed a desire to turn it over to somebody else if that opportunity were to present itself. I said, yes, that's true. He says, well, I've got an idea. I need to move this guy there, which means I can move you there. And I've got this third guy who's an ex-New York cop who I think would be perfect for that place. And I go, how quickly can we do this? Now, the reason I'm telling you this is because it's still evolving. But for this past week, I have been sleeping so much better. I haven't been letting anything bother me. And the property itself has calmed down just a little bit. Now, these things are all interrelated in spirit. And I didn't have to lift a finger. I did have to stand up for myself and express, I don't think I'm the perfect fit for this place. I suspect there may be somebody who can do this and it would work out better for everybody. And by not being afraid to lose something, because I could have just said, hey, I'm out of here. I'll stick with my 1 small property and be done with it. I'm part-time anyway. I'm semi-retired. I don't need this stuff. And let it go at that. But by working the system the way the system works, and allowing Spirit to do the heavy lifting, I break even. I get, at the end of the week, I'm bringing home essentially the same paycheck. I'm doing essentially half the work. Because the 1 property required so much more of my time than it should have. And now somebody who's more fit for it will have the opportunity to work it and make everybody happy. So that's my little tale of success. And I'll take it. And it's one of those stories that I'll fall back on from time to time, because every once in a while we need to remind ourselves that we do have successes. And if we stop and think about how it all evolved, we realize those successes come without a lot of heavy lifting if we pay attention.
Yeah.
And allow Spirit to work through us.
Yep.
So on to the subject of darkness shining from a light. And I will advise you at this point, everybody, to strap in because this could be a bumpy ride. I really have a million angles from which to approach this subject, and I tried to incorporate several of them here. So you're going to need to hang on and see if you can keep up with where my head is scrambling around to as I get into this. And I'm going to start by reminding everyone here that science tells us that our universe started from a single point with a big bang, and that it's been expanding ever since. Logic tells us that items cast out from an explosion succumb to friction and gravity, slowing and eventually falling back to the point of origin, or at least falling out of flight. We've seen a million examples of that. And yet science tells us too that our universe continues to expand and that it's accelerating. That doesn't follow the logic of friction and gravity. Interesting. So let's go back to that single point for a moment. How, we might ask, did all the matter that is our universe come to be at that point? Was it always there? Logic suggests not. The Big Bang, you see, resembles the result of a critical mass event. So before the event, there could not have been a critical mass, or there would have been a Big Bang. So where was all the matter of our universe before the critical mass formed? Now, in the Science of Mind textbook, Ernest Holmes writes that the darkness is the great denial of the light, but it really did not deny the light, for where the light was, the darkness was not. The God power, by whatever name comforts us to call it, is infinite, without beginning and without end. And Holmes reminds us too that all people have sensed that truth is light. Light is sort of the universal symbol for spiritual awareness, what we know as truth. The power that is our universe is the light of truth. So I am led to wonder if another race of free thinkers like ourselves once lived on the other side of the Big Bang. I wonder if their choices over time created such a sense of denial in their true nature that their collective common consciousness brought their universe tumbling down. If so, our Big Bang may be empirical proof that the light of truth cannot be denied. We have all heard that it is always darkest before the dawn. The denial of the light, the denial of our true nature, cannot contain the light. Cannot contain our true nature. We can deny it all we want. It's still there. If indeed the entire physical mass of some former universe compressed down to a single point, the loving creative force of spirit that is the universe we know proved uncontainable and exploded back into expansion in the same instant the point formed. The light could not be contained. This loving creative force is always expanding. This is its nature. Even when it was contracting on the other side of the bang, it was evolving into what it was about to become. None of us goes to bed at night the same as we awoke the morning before. We are constantly evolving. And like the universe, our expansion is accelerating. The sum total of our collective consciousness is evolving faster with each generation. Every generation is dissatisfied with the status quo, and each generation wants a better world for its children. In my lifetime alone, the common consciousness regarding the treatment of Native Americans, for example, minorities, women, thinking that war is a solution to problems. Just to name a few. Our thoughts on fatty foods and gas-guzzling cars. The common consciousness has changed on all of these subjects, and probably 1,000 more that you could think of, things that were commonly accepted as true when we were youth, and now we look back on and cringe. I love my old movies, and sometimes I want to share them with my 15-year-old daughter because they're magnificent pieces of art, and yet I listen to the dialogue and I see and I go, maybe I don't want to share that with her. Maybe I should have reviewed this before I exposed her to it. But then we have an opportunity to talk and and kind of work through those things that have changed in our relationships. Certainly, the Me Too movement, for example, there's something that's just exploded on the scene here in the last couple of years. So when we look back on the way women were treated in some of those early movies and accepted, it was common. That's just the way it is. And now we're looking at it and going, maybe we want to rethink that. Even if it is funny, it's still something we rethink. So but none of this is a new revelation. It really isn't. We've just been noticing more and more of it because technology has blessed us with the ability to see so much more, so much faster. I mean, we absorb more information on a daily basis than, even our parents did in their youth, certainly maybe not in their later life, but certainly when they were young, could see in a year sometimes. It's like, how many times has your phone chimed during the day to remind you of some update, some event that's happening in the world, when before you actually had to go out and purchase a newspaper?
Yeah.
And probably if you did, unless you do this for a living, you probably only purchased one. So you're getting basically one editorial opinion, and that would shape your thinking because that's just the way it is. Now, if you're really savvy, if you really want to torture yourself, you can get a million different opinions, a million times a day.
Yeah.
So we are seeing these things and reacting to them so much more, so much faster, and our brains are changing to the point where we can actually do that. I remember one of my teachers saying he walked in on his teenage daughter. He was going to get her for dinner. He had a reason for knocking on the door and going into her room. And she was on her phone talking to one of her friends. She had her laptop open in front of her and was working on homework there. The TV was on and the stereo was playing. And she was doing all of that.
All of that.
And at the same time, yeah, Daddy, I'll be there in a minute.
Yeah.
I was like, and she was focused on all of those things. Because her mind has learned to just multitask. Perhaps the biblical story of Noah's Ark, because none of these revelations are new, right? The choices of some free-thinking people brought about a flood that ended life on earth as they knew it. Life itself, however, managed to survive. A select few were granted passage on the ark and survived the ordeal, and their descendants have been expanding ever since. Once again, a contraction and an expansion. The Bible repeats the lesson in the story so many are celebrating at this time of year, the birth of the teacher Jesus. The populace is downtrodden, overburdened with taxes, unable to find a room at the local Marriott, when suddenly a light appears in the sky. A new idea is born of humble origins, and the evolution of our common consciousness accelerated noticeably. Past 2,000 years far and away exceeds the achievements of the 100,000 years that preceded it, as far as the development of common consciousness. Pagans celebrate the winter solstice at this same time of year. They recognize the days are growing longer again, and they are not being plunged into endless darkness. Probably why the Christian church co-opted the holiday and said, hey, you know, we have kind of a new idea happening, and you guys got the party thing going on anyway, so why don't we just kind of tack onto it and call it ours? And it worked. And it's a great time to put out lights on the house and celebrate that the light is returning to us, that the truth of our spiritual nature is reborn within us. And this new idea of everyone having the power to tap right into this. That was what made the teacher Jesus unique in this story, is that as he grew and developed in his works, he never claimed to be unique.
Right.
He always said, these works and greater shall they do as well.
Yeah.
Don't expect someone else to do it for you. Believe in yourself, accept your own power, and these things shall happen. And your supervisor will call you up and say, hey, I've got an opportunity for you. And you can jump on it because you have the ability to think, yeah, I deserve that. I deserve to be able to sleep well at night. I deserve to be able to be at peace within myself and to not jump out of my skin every time the phone rings. Because I don't have to worry about who's on the other end. I know it's Nancy from Visa telling me my credit card needs to be updated. No. How many calls have you gotten from her? All of us know dark moments in our lives. Forces seemingly beyond our control conspire against us. Or if we're more realistic, we realize that sometimes we just make bad choices. We deny our true nature. We block spirit from our lives. We draw a curtain and block out the light. But the light does not go away. We can hide, but it's still there. The light is still shining. Our true nature is not contained. When the moment comes that we recognize that the pain of hanging on to denial is greater than our fear of our own empowerment, the curtain falls away, revealing the light that was always there. One of the steps in spiritual mind treatment, or affirmative prayer, is gratitude. And I suspect the importance of gratitude in our spiritual practice is why we experience darkness. Darkness provides the contrast that makes us aware of the light, grateful for the light, and happy to share the light. Nothing makes the heart grow fonder than the absence of that which we love. Nothing makes us appreciate the light more than its absence. We need a little kerfuffle in our daily routine to recognize, oh yeah, this is not what good feels like. I remember good, I remember peace, and that's where I want to be. How do I get there? Oh yeah, I quit trying to push the river I focus on what that good feels like. I focus on what peace feels like internally. I treat others the way I want to be treated. I practice the golden rule. And I see that the light is shining from this darkness. There is a lesson here for me to learn. There is the truth of my own power, the truth of my own joy that recognizes that isn't what I want to be. That is not how I want to be perceived. I am a joyous, brilliant, and by brilliant I mean shining, example of universal love. And I start with myself. I feel this love within me, for me, and I let that emanate out to everyone around me. Even that jerk on I-95. Okay, a moment of darkness so that I can appreciate that I feel so much better when I don't focus on that. And simply focus on the fact that it's another beautiful day. And I get to live it. Thank you.